Hey everyone, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. Really excited to talk about today's topic, the Temple of Tel Arad. A biblical temple was unearthed in 1962 by an archaeologist, Johann Aharoni, who spent his entire life, the rest of his life, studying it, pouring himself into it, and learning about its mysteries. I find it to be absolutely fascinating because it's actually a temple that fits the model of what the Bible calls for the sacrificial temple of Yahweh. And this, in fact, was a temple dedicated to Yahweh and someone else. We'll find out who that is. And we're going to find out how this works in relation to the temple of Solomon. And oddly enough, these two temples are contemporary. So this one was contemporary with the temple of King Solomon, King David's son. It's an absolutely incredible situation. And it's maybe unfortunate that you probably haven't heard of it before. And yet it's been around, like I said, since 1962 or so. All right, so before we dive in, I want to remind y'all, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you want to see more videos like this one, I need to see you show that to me in the numbers, in the subscribers, in the comments, in the likes. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. I found something really good through the Medane project where they give a very thorough explanation of what this temple is. We're going to see some pictures. We're actually going to see some videos as well from various people who have gone to it and taken a look at it. What I'm most fascinated by is actually you get to see the Holy of Holies. You know what the Holy of Holies is in the Bible? So in the Bible, you have different elements to the temple. And actually, even before the temple, you had the tabernacle, right? But let's just talk about the temple that was certainly a modified version of the tabernacle and its system. You have an outer courtyard. You have a place where they offer the animal sacrifices. Then you have the holy place inside the temple. Various things were going on there, maybe incense, a table of showbread, lights. Then behind a curtain, you had the Holy of Holies. And this was a place that only the high priest could go into, and only once a year. And when he would go in, he would offer the ashes of a specific animal sacrifice that they had on the Day of Atonement and would say the divine name of God, Yahweh, and offer this up as a sacrifice to Yahweh on behalf of the people of Israel in atonement for the sins of the people of Israel. So it happened very rarely, only once a year, and only the high priest could go in there. And they would actually attach a rope to him. Because if he died in there, in the presence of God, they weren't going in there. They weren't going in there to get his body out. They would have to drag him out. So they attached a rope to him. This is just a fascinating stuff. All this is described, of course, in the Pentateuch, in the Bible. Okay, so Holy of Holies, this is just the holiest part of the temple. You can't go in it. Nobody can go in it except the high priest. And he even only just once a year. And here at this temple in Tel Arad, there's a Holy of Holies. And we kind of get to get a quick glimpse of what it looks like. Now, it's a lot smaller in scale compared to the one in Jerusalem. That one was much larger. You had two large cherubim on the inside of it. These are depictions of angels. Yes, the tabernacle and even the temple had visual images of things, including angels. It's really large. This one here in Tel Arad is pretty small. It looks like only a few people can be in there at one time. But there's something fascinating on the inside of it. And we're going to get to see what the Holy of Holies look like. And maybe that gives us just a slight glimpse of perhaps what maybe on a smaller scale the Holy of Holies would have looked like in Jerusalem. was Solomon's temple. Maybe. Watch this, though. I'm going to share my screen. Let's take a look at this together. The Tel Arad temple. This is in Israel, kind of in southern part. So on a map, let's see. I thought I had the map prepared here, but you can see the temple not too far from the Dead Sea and just south of Jerusalem, and not very far from Jerusalem, right? That's pretty close. So you can see where it is relative to Israel, Jordan, Alexandria, Egypt, Beirut, Lebanon. Okay. So that's where we're talking about. All right. Now, the Tel Arad temple or sanctuary is an ancient Hebrew temple from the kingdom of Judah. This was, believe it or not, in the kingdom of Judah. You would think this would be like in the northern kingdom territory where they had other rival temples, right? After the schism with Solomon's son and a few others, there was a schism between them. Well, you would think it would be in the northern kingdom. Actually, no, this is in the southern kingdom, dating back to 950 BC. This is contemporary with Solomon's temple. The citadel and sanctuary were constructed at the time of King David and Solomon. This is how old we're talking about. At the time of David and Solomon in the temple in Jerusalem. So while that is going on, there's this other one over here, not far from Jerusalem, a stone's throw away. The citadel and sanctuary were constructed at the time of King David and Solomon. During the reign of either King Hezekiah or King Josiah, this temple was dismantled according to 2 Kings 23:8, which tells you what? There were probably others like this. There were probably lots of them. The fact, however, is we don't have actual archaeological evidence of other ones for the most part, because they would have been destroyed by either King Hezekiah or King Josiah. This one was destroyed, but the way in which it was destroyed, it ended up getting buried and preserved. But that isn't always the case for other places when they're destroyed. And 2 Kings 23:8 says this: Josiah brought all the priests from the towns of Judah and desecrated the high places, from Geba to Beersheba, where the priests had burned incense. So all in that territory, which includes here. He broke down the gateway at the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the city governor, which was on the left of the city gate. So because of this, a lot of these places were just destroyed, but this one actually survived the time period and survives unto this very day. So it's incredible to just get a glimpse of what you would be seeing at the time of King David and King Solomon. The temple at Arad was uncovered by archaeologist Johann Aharoni in 1962, who spent the rest of his life considering its mysteries, dying there in the mid-70s. So, in the northwestern corner of the fortress, because there's a citadel attached to it, the remains of a temple were found. So within the fortress, apparently Judean. And it was in use from the 9th century to the end of the 8th century, concurrent with the temple in Jerusalem. So it was not necessarily the case that everybody went up to the temple of Solomon. Some were going to these other temples throughout the land. This is one of the few temples remaining from biblical times. The temple in Arad was built according to the plan of the tabernacle described in the Bible and consisted of 3 parts: the inner courtyard, the temple, and the Holy of Holies. Here it is. So I'm going to actually just kind of walk you through it. Here's the outer court, this area right here. Right here is in the center is the altar. And this is where they would burn the animal sacrifices. And it's made according to the biblical description. There's a very clear way in which it's described how you make the altar, of what kind of stone, what you're to do. It meets the description. Like, this thing meets the description of what is called for in the Bible. Moving forward ahead a little bit, you then have this room here. You can kind of see towards the upper left. That is the holy place. So that's like the inside of the temple, if you will. And then there is a small room at the very back, top left. And that is the Holy of Holies. We'll get a closer glimpse of it here in a moment. But that's just kind of a bird's eye view, overview of this temple. You can see it's pretty small, right? Maybe at the most, you could squeeze 60 or so people in there. Now, here's the Holy of Holies. Notice what you have. So once you go past the holy place, here's the entrance, this little tiny entrance. And this is small. You can only fit maybe 6 people in here, right? So it's not large at all compared to the one that you have, in Jerusalem. This just, it's much bigger, large enough to have 2 massive cherubim with its wings touching each other in the very center, and an Ark of the Covenant in the middle. All right, so this is obviously on another scale, a lot smaller. But notice what you have as soon as you enter here. 2 altars of incense. You see that? One over here and one to the right. And of course, in the tabernacle and also the temple, you had an altar of incense right, in front of the holy place. The Holy of Holies. And that's where they would offer incense sacrifices. You have different kinds of sacrifices, animal sacrifices, drink sacrifices, if you will, incense sacrifices. Notice what's in the back of the Holy of Holies. Did you see that? 2 large stones next to each other. Do you know why there's 2 stones there? Now, if you just kind of refresh your memory here, going through the biblical text, there's nothing there about these 2 large stones. Why did they have this? What exactly are they? It's fascinating to find out. The Holy of Holies. In the Holy of Holies of this temple, 2 incense altars and a standing stone, actually 2 standing stones, that's what they're called, standing stones, were found, probably having been dedicated to Yahweh. But there's 2 of them, right? Well, only one of them is dedicated to Yahweh, the divine name of God, according to Exodus chapter 6. Well, who's the other one to? You'll find out here in just a second. The finds of an Israelite temple and altar, the Holy of Holies, is something extremely rare, as most of these altars were destroyed when it was decided to concentrate the cult or worship to the Almighty in Jerusalem. Located in a small chamber on the west side of the altar, accessed by 3 steps. See that here. 2 incense altars flanking the entrance, and 2 standing stones are on its rear side. A small bama, or stage or high place, is located on the rear side. And a replica of the Holy of Holies is exhibited at the Israel Museum. Here's a closer look at the altar that's outside of that Holy of Holies that we're just looking at. This is where they would burn the animal sacrifices. And it's made of uncut stones. Like they're not tampering with the stones of the altar itself. And that's one of the commands for the biblical tabernacle, is that you're not to cut them. You're not to alter them. It has to be uncut stones like this. Now, the altar In the heart of the courtyard, there was a square altar built of small stones and faced with unchiseled stones. This altar complies with the biblical prohibition against building an altar of stones chiseled by means of a metal tool. Having passed the altar of burnt offering through the outer court and sanctuary area, the priest would enter the area known as the inner court or holy place. So you had the outer court where that right here you have this altar, and then just over here to the left is the entrance for the inner court, and then just beyond that is the Holy of Holies. The measurements of the altar fits the biblical description, having a size of 5 square cubits. This is wild, and I'm going to show you here in a minute why this is wild. Exodus 27:1 says to do it this way, but there's some things being done in this temple that don't really match up with the biblical account. So some things are in conformity, like the dimensions or the way in which it's to be done, I should say. The way in which the altar is supposed to be built, the structure of it as a whole. But then there's something wild and out of place. Some of y'all may already know what I'm talking about here. Among the most significant artifacts unearthed at Tel Arad are 91 ostraka in Paleo-Hebrew, referring to the citadel as the house of Yahweh. This is actually one of the first times we encounter the name Yahweh. What's the first time? Anybody recall? The people of Shasu. I forget the exact date. Let's see. It mentions the Shasu of Yahweh. I want to say this is 1400 BC or so, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on that. But that's the first time we see the name Yahweh, which is odd because Exodus 6:3 says that the first person to really know the name of Yahweh was Moses. Now, there's some controversy on that. Some like Michael Heiser say, actually, that's a mistranslation. And the correct translation doesn't necessarily mean that Moses was the first to learn of the name Yahweh. And that would resolve some potential tensions, because it does appear that the name Yahweh was known to the pagans even before Moses and was worshipped as a pagan god by the pagans before Moses. So there's a little bit of tension there, and there's a debate on translation, and Michael Heiser seems to have offered a potential solution. Tabling that to the side, there's not a lot of references to Yahweh in archaeology. There's that reference. There's also then this at this temple. And it calls this place the house of Yahweh. Another inscription was found on the site by Aharoni mentioning a house of Yahweh, which William G. Dever suggests may have referred to the temple at Arad or the temple at Jerusalem. So there's a little bit of debate on, is this house of Yahweh this temple? Is it the one in Jerusalem? Either way, it's very clear that the same way in which Yahweh is worshipped in Jerusalem with the altar and the Holy of Holies, that's being done here as well. One of the ostraka also found in the same room were addressed to a person named Eliashiv, ordering him to deliver a specific quantity of wine flour and so on. And here's this whole citadel. Over here towards the right is the temple area. You can see an illustration of it, of what it would have looked like at the time in which it was fully functioning. Over here with the temple in the back and various houses within the citadel. Here is another illustration of what it would have looked like. So here's the entrance, got the outer court, got the altar. You go over here into the inner court, the holy place, and then beyond that into that little room, the Holy of Holies. Here's another visual picture of it that you can see from very recently. Here's another kind of bird's eye view depiction of the Holy of Holies. You can see, again, very small place. Now, there's several things that are fascinating about this, and I wanted to talk to you about why there are two stones here. What's going on with that? Well, I came across this from the Institute of Biblical Archaeology. It talks about these stones that are found on the inside of this temple. These elongated stones with a rounded top, which was placed on its narrow side. In most cases, a natural stone was chosen for this purpose, and it typically bears no signs of intellectual shaping or only minimal ones. The description is reminiscent of the command by Moses to build an altar in the promised land. And there shalt thou build an altar unto the Lord thy God, an altar of stones. Thou shalt lift up no iron tool upon them. Thou shalt build the altar of the Lord of thy God from unhewn stones. Though this command of Moses had nothing to do with these other stones, matzevot, it shows that not shaping stones was an architectural cultic practice of the time period in which Moses lived. Now, these altar stones were not idols, though unlike most matzevot, which were usually erected to represent a deity or the abode of the deity. There are examples of matzevot being used to commemorate an oath, covenant, or event functioning as monuments rather than idols. It's noteworthy that the majority of standing stones are decorated, except for those discovered in Israel, which are almost always unblemished or unembellished, I should say. And that's certainly the case in what we're seeing here, right? If you go back to the picture, let's maybe go to this one right here. You can clearly see that here. Standing stones found in Israel and the immediately surrounding area are almost always plain stones. This plain stone tradition has long been identified by scholars as connected with the biblical prohibition against iconism or images of any kind. While scholars still debate the exact purpose of them, their ubiquity is unquestioned. And let me actually find you the reference to the one that we're considering here. They show a picture of the Tel Arad temple, or Holy of Holies here in the article. And I did some research. Turns out the reason why there are two of these in the Holy of Holies is one is to Yahweh, one is to Asherah, Yahweh's consort. If you will, the concubine here, according to their view. You ever heard of that before? Some of these Near Eastern people with this idea that a god has a companion or an associate, a queen consort, usually the wife of a reigning king. Well, Asherah, according to some of the people in this land, was the companion of Yahweh. Now, of course, you have Asherah poles and things like that that are being prohibited in the Bible, and the people of Israel are commanded to destroy them. And we see, according to the biblical accounts, the people of Israel were often worshiping Yahweh along with other deities, very common at that time. It's not until Isaiah where you very clearly get the notion of there are no other gods other than Yahweh. But prior to that, a lot of the Israelites struggled with worshiping other deities and also worshiping Yahweh in the way that the pagan nations worshiped seemingly Yahweh and also other deities. And so that's why there are two representations here of these two deities within the Holy of Holies. So what I find to be fascinating is what's wild is They're doing what the Bible says to do as far as how to depict the temple, right? Putting the issue of the side of it needs to be in Jerusalem, stuff like that. Putting that to the side, they're doing it according to how the tabernacle and temple was supposed to be done, but they're clearly involving idolatry with it as well. So there's some elements that are not matching the purpose of the temple worship that you have in Jerusalem. That's supposed to be only for Yahweh. But we even know the one in Jerusalem struggled with idolatry. We know that. You even see Ezekiel talking about that in his own day, looking in the temple and seeing weepers to Thamud, I believe, is who the deity was. All sorts of wild stuff going on, corruption taking place right there within the temple. So I just thought this is absolutely incredible. This is fascinating. What they don't have, though, is an Ark of the Covenant. For them, however, it didn't seem to matter. It didn't seem like you have to have an Ark of the Covenant kind of thing. No. They just had some kind of representation of Yahweh there and his companion. And that was it. No cherubim. No Ark of the Covenant. Seemingly no table of showbread and menorah, unless they were there and there's just no more evidence of it. So this is interesting. And again, this was probably not the only place that some of the people in Judea worshipped at. It seems like they had a lot of these all over. They just didn't survive because, again, 2 Kings 23 says they were destroyed by either King Hezekiah or Josiah. So I thought this was fascinating. I wanted to bring it to your attention. And I got a lot of other stuff like this that I want to show y'all that I think you might find interesting. But I need to know if there's interest. Because if not, I'll just do some shows on some other topics. But if you find this to be fascinating, you want to see more about it, let me know. And we'll certainly go over it. Now, I have something else to also show you about this temple. This is actually how I first heard about it. Wild enough. So not only was there this weird stuff of idolatry going on, right? There was actually, it turns out, let me show you the picture again. Let me show it to you. You remember we just covered right here at the entrance, you got these two places of incense. Okay, they found some weird stuff on it, right? some of the stuff that they were burning on it. They're like, oh, this is interesting. What is this? They sent it to the lab. Guess what it came back as? What were they burning here? Well, frankincense, among other things. Frankincense and, believe it or not, cannabis. You heard that right. Wild stuff, right? So take a look at this. The temple and the cannabis use. The temple at Arad was uncovered by archaeologists in 1962. In the Holy of Holies of this temple, 2 incense altars, those are the ones we just looked at, and 2 possible stelae or masevot, or standing stones were found. Unidentified dark material preserved on their upper surfaces was submitted for organic residue analysis, and THC, CBD, and CBN, which derived from cannabis, were detected on the smaller altar. So that's going to be this one right here. That's the guilty one right here. Okay. And then the large one had many chemicals associated with frankincense. While the use of frankincense for cultic purposes is well known, the presence of cannabis was novel, if not shocking. It represents the first known evidence of hallucinogenic substance found in the kingdom of Judah. Cannabis has been found at other religious archaeological sites like Deir Allah as hemp fiber, and that's evidently in Jordan. So what what exactly was going on here? Why were they doing this? Were they evidently getting high or something? I don't know it. Don't know, but I thought that was pretty weird, right? Okay. Oh, and here's another visual representation that you should be able to see there on your screen, um, showing the entire citadel and the Holy of Holies, altar of incense, holy place, altar, all that is over here, top right. Um, Anyways, I did also come across a video by World Video Bible School that I wanted to briefly play for y'all. It's like a 4 or 5 minute video that briefly touches on this temple, and I thought y'all might actually find to be productive if I show just a few minutes of it. Hopefully, I won't get a copyright strike or anything like that. If I do, I'll have to remove it after the fact. But let me put my headphones on here and watch it with y'all so that I don't hear any, don't get any feedback to y'all. All right, let's take a look.
In the desolate Negev region of southern Israel, a mysterious temple was discovered that was devoted to God and his wife. This was a surprising discovery made there in the 20th century by Israeli archaeologist Yohanan Aharoni. It has revealed some very disturbing evidence about ancient Israel, evidence that makes a powerful connection between faith and fact. Joshua chapter 12 tells us that the king of Arad was one of the figures who was conquered or vanquished by the Israelites when they invaded the land of Canaan. This particular city served an important function in religious and administrative affairs in southern Israel. So even though it wasn't mentioned frequently in the Bible, it did have an important role to play. It was destroyed and rebuilt numerous times through history, including its destruction by the forces of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Ancient Arad was located in the west of the Dead Sea, only a few miles from the modern community of Arad.
So notice again, it's south of Jerusalem. It's not in the northern kingdom.
Arad served as a fortress, an administrative center, and a religious center for the area. It was destroyed a half a dozen times during the Israelite monarchy, but always built back rapidly. It was obviously an important place. An Israelite temple was discovered there that had strong similarities with Solomon's temple. Its entrance was on the eastern side. It had a main room and a most...
Look, so here's the altar, outer court, inner court, and then Holy of Holies.
Holy place. But there were two altars at the front of the most holy place, one on either side. And these were believed to have been for Yahweh and for his consort, Asherah.
So this one is going to be for Yahweh, the larger one, and then for his consort, Asherah, the smaller one. That's the one that had weed on it.
Now, Asherah was known as a mother goddess that appears in a number of pagan religions as the consort of the supreme male deity. Investigators found charred remains on the tops of these altars, suggesting that...
Look how small that is compared to him. And look how tiny the room is compared to this guy.
Incense or some other items were burned there. Also, inside the most holy place were...
Like I said, you can only fit like maybe at the most 6 people in there.
Or some other items were burned there. Also, inside the most holy place were found 2 large stones, perhaps meant to signify the presence of Yahweh and his consort Asherah. Apparently, Israel absorbed some of the religious practices of their neighbors. In the main room just in front of the most holy place, excavators also found an altar for burnt offerings. It was built of mud bricks and stones, conforming to the instructions of God's word for building the altar.
And that's from Exodus 20:25. And actually, this is pretty common. In fact, I think we did a whole video previously, myself and Louis Dizon, where we showed how the cult of Yahweh, the worship that's prescribed there in the Bible for Yahweh, possesses and contains elements that are taken from paganism. We've spoken about this before. Like the way the temple is structured resembles some aspects of various pagan nations around the Israelites. Some of the practices that are involved came from that, originated from that. And I've actually pointed this out to a lot of people who are, especially in the Catholic community, disturbed by elements of enculturation in the liturgy. And I just constantly have to point out to them, if you're bothered by that, I don't know how you deal with biblical worship. But tabling that issue, let's continue.
There were also benches lining the walls, perhaps where worshipers placed the sacrifices or the vessels that were used in worship. It's an intriguing mix of faithfulness to the plans for the temple and worship center, but blended with pagan elements and an unauthorized construction. From all of this, we have the impression that this was a direct competitor of the legitimate temple in Jerusalem, even in the days of King Solomon.
All right. So, and now, was it a competitor? That's one of the questions. You're welcome to go and watch the rest of it. That's A Temple to Yahweh and His Wife, World Video Bible School. Was it something competing with Solomon's temple? Or did they see it as operating in conjunction with it? They may very well have seen it as operating in conjunction with what's going on in Jerusalem. Now, maybe they had a flawed understanding. I'm just saying, from their perspective, they may not necessarily have seen what they're doing there as in opposition to what's being done in Jerusalem and evidently elsewhere in that land, because this wasn't the only location. Maybe next time we can take a look at another example of one of these places that has survived time, and still we can find archaeological evidence of it to this very day. But if we're going to do that, I want to know from y'all if this is something of interest to y'all. You need to let me know in the comment section. Give me some feedback to this. Do you enjoy this kind of stuff? Do you want to see more content about this? If so, put it in the comments, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Also, consider supporting me at Patreon. This is how I provide for my family. So if you want to see more great content coming your way, I really need y'all to consider prayerfully supporting the channel. Patreon.com/Reason and Theology, or just hit the join button right here on YouTube. You also gain access to plenty of extra content. And I'm about to do in just a few minutes a patron-only show here in just a moment, because guess what? Y'all thought that St. Malachi prophecy was over? No, 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 no. I told y'all. They would find a way to resurrect that thing from the dead and apply it to the current pope. And guess what? They did exactly that. There are now people arguing that Robert Prevost, the current pope's name in Latin, spells Petrus Romanus, who's supposed to be the final pope according to the Malachi prophecy, which has already been debunked on this channel, but people are still resurrecting it, reviving it, putting more spins on it, saying that his name spells it out. And so we're going to take a look at that, but I'm going to cover that as a patron-only show for y'all. So if you want to see that, go ahead, hit the join button right here on YouTube, or go over to Patreon, patreon.com/Reason and Theology. Sign up there, or Locals. I got a Locals account too, and you get the same extra patron-only material at either one of those platforms. Just some people prefer some over than others. So you got options. All right. That's going to do it for today. See you later. God bless.